Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
All across the fantasy universe, welcome into a wild offseason of NFL football. This is the Fantasy Football Hustle. I'm your host, Brian Drake of FightingChanceFantasy.com, joined as always by PFF Senior Fantasy Analyst, Mr. Dwain McFarland. We're coming to you recording this on a Wednesday afternoon, and as we come on the air, Dwain, news has broken this afternoon that the Kansas City Chiefs have traded six-time Pro Bowl wide receiver Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins for 5 draft picks, including a first-rounder this year, a second and fourth-round pick, and then a couple of picks they're going to throw in next year. Whew, let's just take a step back, say, hey, how you doing? And, man, this is going to be some wild stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the craziest offseason I can ever remember. I mean, the trades we're seeing, these superstar receivers like Adams, Cooper, not quite superstar, but a star, Robert Woods. Now you got Tyreek Hill. There's just a lot of action. I mean, this is definitely the most action-packed offseason that I can remember pre-draft.
Yeah, and what we're going to do, folks, is we can't cover everything that's happened in this offseason, but you've been hit over the head with that a million times from every podcast. We're not going to act like this is the only show you guys have ever listened to on fantasy football, but what we want to do is kind of spin it forward, okay? How does this impact best ball drafts, maybe your dynasty league? Obviously, we have high stakes in redraft coming up down the line here. So we've got Dwain's first run of rankings over at pff.com. Use promo code HUSTLE. It's going to save you 25% off any subscription. You can get these for free right now, I believe, Dwain. Am I right?
Yeah, they're non-paywalled right now. Yeah.
Look at that. So get over there, check out all the great stuff. And then when it does go behind a paywall, use that promo code HUSTLE. Save 25%. Get the NFL draft guide. Actually, hey, you want to save even more money? Free agency 30. Use that promo code. You can save 30% off any PFF sub. Just tell them Drake and McFarland sent you. So, Dwain, this is incredible here. I can't believe that, number one, this trade went down, and there's a lot of tentacles that are going to reach out from this trade. So, Tyreek Hill goes to Miami for 5 picks, okay? Now, people might say, wow, that's great. Tyreek Hill is going to Miami. Miami's loaded. You got Jalen Waddle. How does this affect his ADP? Now that the Dolphins lose a couple of draft picks this year. Don't forget, folks, the Dolphins still have 2 first-rounders next year because they have one from the 49ers. So don't think that they're done with and they're just going to sit here with Tua going forward. If this doesn't work out, there's a couple of really good quarterbacks coming out next year, and they've got ammo to go up and get one of those guys, but we're getting too far ahead of ourselves. So Tyreek Hill, who over the last 2 years, Dwain, has finished as a top 6 PPR wide receiver, is now on the move to Miami. Let's start in Miami where he's going. How do you see this for fantasy football? Is he still a first-round pick? Where are you comfortable drafting him with your projections and Tua and his kind of noodle arm? Where do you see him going for 2022? And how does this affect Jalen Waddle, who everybody was in on? They got the new coach, McDaniels, in there. He's talking up Jalen Waddle, but this is going to put a major monkey wrench in that hype train.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like, we're going to have to hear more about how they're going to play these guys. But I mean, obviously, Tyreek Hill's going to be one of the most targeted players on the team. I think Waddle will also be one of the most targeted players on the team. I think that's definitely your top 2 guys. So I think they'll still be involved. It definitely takes some of the top off of Waddle, right? Because we were just thinking, hey, could you get like a 30% target share type season? You're probably not going to see that now. But I still think that Waddle can be, a valuable piece, especially if you're playing in dynasty leagues, things like that. Don't quite have the very high end range of outcomes that we may have seen before, where he could have been like this true alpha target hog, which is kind of what we saw for spurts last year, playing out of the slot. But to your point, like if Tua doesn't really take a step forward and wanting to push the ball down the field and doing some of those other things, which I think he will, playing with more play action, going to see a lot more space in front of him, with the scheme and design that you're going to get from Mike McDaniels. I think there's going to be opportunity for him to push the ball down the field in different ways. Doesn't just have to be, hey, a guy going long for a bomb. You're not going to get the same broken plays that you used to get from Tyreek Hill when he and Patrick Mahomes would just improvise, when Mahomes would buy time, and eventually just like, well, nobody can keep up with Tyreek Hill at this point. I'm just going to chunk it as far as I can, and we're going to score a touchdown. Like you're not going to get those plays. But by and large, a lot of those plays have been taken away by the way NFL defenses were already starting to play, have been playing, the Chiefs for the last 18 months. And so, I don't know how huge that will be, but I think, number one, for Tyreek Hill, this is a downgrade, though.
Big time.
It's a big step down from Patrick Mahomes to, Tua. And so, like, you hear me a lot of times talk about, quarterbacks, how much quarterbacks impact fantasy production is probably overrated, but this is a big step. This is one of those big steps that you do have to pay attention to. So when you look at the situation, here's the way I look at it. You had Tyreek Hill playing in a pass-happy offense. Basically, there was no down, no distance, didn't matter. The Chiefs could be throwing. Now, they weren't a team that ran a ton of plays. They were hyper efficient. So it's not like you're leaving a team that was running, at warp speed. That's the one thing with the Chiefs. Still take a lot of time at the line of scrimmage. They don't run that warp speed stuff a lot, but going to drop back to pass 65, 70% of the time, in a game. You're not going to get that with the Dolphins, most likely. If you look at the way that McDaniels is probably going to want to run his offense, he just added a fullback. They did get the tackle Armstead. That's going to help Tua. But when you look at the overall way this offense runs, and you saw it in San Francisco, even with Debo, even with Ayuk, even with George Kittle, and a very average quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, which is what we probably have in Tua, he could still improve. You're probably going to see something more of a pass balance to run balanced offense, meaning dropping back to pass, 60% of the time. You're not going to have those 70% of the time games. You're also probably not going to run quite as many plays because you're not going to be quite as efficient. So it's going to be a situation where you have the big play ability is going to be lower with Tua throwing you the ball. You're not going to be throwing the ball as much, and you're going to have to divvy up targets between you and Waddle, potentially Gesicki, and some of these other guys. So I think overall, that's just a downgrade for Tyreek Hill. I don't think there's any way around it. Going to have probably less targets because of less passing, probably going to score less touchdowns because of the downgrade in the quarterback, probably going to have less receptions, less targets, all those things, just because of the nature of all those things we just talked about coming together. So for me, there used to be a tier one for this year, looking at redraft, best ball. This is not talking dynasty here, but the tier one of receivers, right, was really Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Davante Adams. I think that list is now down to Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. I no longer include Tyreek Hill. We'll get to Davante Adams in a second. They're both out of it. They're in a tier down below that now. They're still good players, but it's going to make it tougher to pull the trigger. Like before, I would have had no problem. You get to the end of the first round, you don't like the running backs, you just pull the trigger on Tyreek Hill. Just pull the trigger on Tyreek Hill. Just pull the trigger on Tyreek Hill. Not going to feel as clear about that anymore. Not that you're necessarily going to pivot and go to a running back, but I think he's now in the range with these other receivers. You got Hill, Adams, Debo Samuel, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins. All those names are he's more jumbled with the rest of those names, in my opinion now.
Yeah, if you look at the targets over the last 2 years in Kansas City, 159 targets this past year, caught 111 of them. 2 years ago, when he was overall wide receiver 2 in fantasy, he had 135 targets, caught 87 of them for 15 touchdowns. And yeah, like you said, we're just not going to see that here. You've got Jalen Waddle also in your top 10. I'm sure you wrote this before this news broke. Where do you drop him down, or do you keep him in the top 10?
He's going to drop down a little bit, but it's like the other thing you're doing here is you start looking at the rest of the names. You still always want to bet on talent. Then you bring in situation next. So it's not like, after what Jalen Waddle did as a rookie, he was over a 75 PFF receiving grade, at a 24%, target share, targets per route run, 24 yards per route run, 1.75. It's not, you're not going to be able to just tank Jalen Waddle. It's going to be really hard to do that. So if you were projecting Jalen Waddle at a 30% target share, you're not getting that. But what you might still get is a 25% target share to Jalen Waddle in a more run-heavy offense. So, he'll still most likely be right on the verge of being in my top 12, because once you get to names like DK Metcalf, who's Metcalf going to have throwing to him? in a terrible offense that runs less plays than anyone. So you still might take him over DK Metcalf, right? So you get to that list, but maybe, you talk about DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen. Some people may lean to some of those veterans. Deontay Johnson, you're going to have Mitchell Trubisky. DJ Moore doesn't have a quarterback. Elijah Moore, we don't know what we really have yet with quarterback, and he's already being drafted pretty high. So when you start naming all those other guys, like, it's hard to just say, well, I'm going to push him down below all those. To me, he's in the mix. He's going to be in the mix with a lot of those other players.
If you're drafting on Underdog today, you've seen that so far ADP wise, Tyreek Hill was wide receiver 5. That's going to change. His overall ADP was 9.3. If you go down just a hair, Jalen Waddle was coming off the board at wide receiver 10. So we'll monitor that as we always do in the offseason. We love checking out these ADPs. And of course, we'll get our buddy Fantasy Mojo with our high stakes ADPs. But it's going to be fascinating.
I think CeeDee Lamb clearly moves ahead of Waddle for me now. I probably, I would consider moving T. Higgins ahead of Waddle just because I like the quarterback better. And you're talking about a same kind of scenario, right? A competitive offense where you're having to compete with one another for targets. I might like T. Higgins a little better just because I think the Bengals are upside, in their overall offense because of their quarterback. I like that better probably than what I'm going to see with Waddle, but that's about where it would stop, right? Then you get into Metcalf, Hopkins, Allen. Like, I would consider Waddle with all those guys, but I think Lamb clearly already had AJ Brown above Waddle, but I would clearly move Lamb above Waddle now, probably moving T. Higgins above Waddle.
There's a lot of great pieces here in Miami now. They've upgraded their offensive line. As we saw Teron Armstead go there, they picked up one of your guys from the Cowboys. In the backfield now, we've got Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert. So as we get closer to the season, we're going to be breaking down all these teams. But, man, things are really looking up in Miami and just a loaded AFC. I mean, holy cow. I tweeted out earlier today at Drake Fantasy that CBS pays $3.1 billion per year for the AFC. That's a steal. I mean, every team is great now in the AFC. What a season that we're going to be having on our hands. Now let's look over to Kansas City. I also tweeted out after that, with the loss of Tyreek Hill, and now you're looking at Mahomes, Kelsey, Juju Smith-Schuster, who was added this year, the cast of no-names who fill out the rest of that wide receiver room. Is this even a playoff team in the loaded AFC? That's really not what we're here for. We're here for fantasy, but that's how big, in my mind, Dwain, of a difference maker Tyreek Hill is. You think of the plays he made against Buffalo to win that game, and the play he actually should have made against Cincinnati to win that game at the goal line. He is such a difference maker. And if now it's just Mahomes running around out there trying to find Kelsey, I don't think Juju's a difference maker. I'm sure they'll draft someone now, but this is a major, major step back for this Kansas City offense.
Yeah. I mean, who gives nightmares to the opposing defensive coordinator on the Chiefs out of everyone? It's going to be Tyreek Hill, because at any moment it can be a touchdown.
Changes the coverage.
Yeah, it changes things a lot. But, the Chiefs have really adapted their offense over the last year to learn how to play against all of these too high looks, and they're running a lot more underneath type stuff. But they're going to have other guys step up. You mentioned Juju. Juju, man, he hardly got any money at all. No one really wanted to sign him. I'm not that confident in him. It is an incentive-laden deal. So if you believe in that sort of thing, and Juju is still young. Like, you've got to give him that. The thing with Smith-Schuster is, it seems like he's getting to be one of those guys where we're going to treat him like a Amari Cooper, where you're like, is this guy like 35 yet? And you keep checking. You're like, no, he's 28. He's 29. But right now, I mean, as far as Juju Smith-Schuster, I mean, he's going to be heading into his age 26 season. I mean, he's still within the prime of his career. The problem for Smith-Schuster, we've only got 1 year where he was really good. He had a 23% target share in 2018. With the Steelers. Now, he's been banged up a lot since then, but that next year when we really thought, wow, Antonio Brown out of the picture, can he take this next step, really be this true stud? He never was able to handle it. Was not really good playing on the outside, played better on the inside. Now, he'll get to play in the slot all the time here, but now you're going to have him and Travis Kelce really kind of competing in the same area of the field. And it's like you mentioned with Tyreek Hill gone, like, who's going to stretch the field? Patrick Mahomes does not want to throw the ball to Mecole Hardman. Like, we've seen this enough. Like they put Mecole Hardman on the field as someone they knew they needed a third option to help stretch defenses out. And he's just never really been able to come through. They've schemed him some things, where he gets these open looks, right? And he'll score a touchdown because the coverage is blown or it's a bubble or something where he can run after the catch. There's nice things that Mecole Hardman can do, but he's not a guy they really want out there when you're dropping back to pass 70% of the time and you're having to be on the same page with your quarterback. Now, could it happen? Yeah, but we're going into year 4. We just haven't seen it with Mecole Hardman. He's never really had the targets per route run. So even if you account for the fact that, he hadn't been able to be on the field enough, I'm not that excited about it. So out of this, like the way I look at it, Juju right now, like you mentioned, they're probably going to draft a receiver. They may draft 2. Maybe they've got another move that they're thinking about making. But I think you probably look at Juju being worth, if he can stay healthy all season, I think he could get 20% of the targets. I think if you see people getting out of line saying, oh, he's going to get 25, 30% of the targets, we really just don't have enough to suggest that Juju's even capable of that, And so I think 20% though, on say, if the Chiefs drop back to pass, 625 times, or they throw the ball 625 times, that's not that bad. I mean, you're going to get 80 receptions out of that, because he's going to mostly be working underneath and intermediate. So he's going to have a pretty good completion rate, but I don't think he's going to get 100 catches. Like I even went back and forth with our own Nathan Yonke in our chat, and Nathan's a little higher on him, who I respect. So like, I think it's in the range of outcomes, definitely for Juju. If a guy like Nathan thinks it's there, that he could get to 100 catches, I feel a lot better. I think that's his absolute ceiling if everything goes perfectly. I look at Juju probably being more of a 75 to 85 reception guy if he can stay healthy all season. Maybe he gets 1,000, 1,100 yards out of that. I don't expect a lot out of him after the catch, especially with the things condensed around him without someone else to take the top off the defense. I just don't see a huge touchdown total, but you are getting to play with Patrick Mahomes. So that's always going to be an upgrade. I think the way that Juju would really outperform, his ADP would be if he had one of those weird years, all of a sudden, somebody blows up for 12 touchdowns. Like that would really do it for Juju. Because then if he catches 75, 80 balls, but he catches 10 touchdowns, 1,100 yards, like you're going to feel great about what you have with Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't think you're going to, I think you're going to see some people get crazy and they're just going to automatically assume because, you got Tyreek Hill gone, that Juju's just going to see 25, 30% of the targets. That's the scenario I just don't see.
A couple of guys you might look for in the draft. I think Jameson Williams out of Alabama would be a great fit to kind of take that Tyreek role. Chris Olave, another guy to watch in the draft.
I would say Jameson's the favorite to go there. Now, we've seen a couple times, though, Jameson being mocked to the Patriots by insiders that kind of know the Patriots. So I don't know. We'll see what happens there. You definitely got that Alabama connection between Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. But if you could get Jameson Williams past the Patriots, I think there's a good shot for the Chiefs to be able to take a swing on a guy like Jameson, which would be perfect to your point. You got to let him get healed up. But I think that would be a good fit for the offense.
Juju on underdog right now, and this is obviously going to change. He's coming off the board at pick 100. He's wide receiver 45. So we'll see how that changes. Is any of this news, does this change how you view Patrick Mahomes now? I mean, he's coming off the board on underdog. He's quarterback 2. He's still quarterback 2 to you? Like, where do you place him? I'm looking at your rankings right here.
Yeah, I haven't adjusted anything. The way I look at this is there's going to be a tier of these quarterbacks. And I'm not taking any of them unless someone falls to me. So and that's going to be the strategy that I'm going to really recommend to people, just like we did last year, and I wrote an article about it. Look, there's no reason to force Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, any of those guys. But if any one of them fall to you, like around past ADP or more, and you're going to be drafting multiple teams, well, then that's when you get your exposure to those players. And part of it was just because we knew Tom Brady was going to be in a very prolific offense and people were ignoring him, letting him fall to 8th and best ball, 7th, 8th round, single quarterback redraft. He was falling 9th, 10th, 11th round. We had Jalen Hurts going in the 9th, 10th round. So I think there's going to be guys that we like just like that this year. And the fact that, there's not any one of them that differentiate that much to make me want to have to spend that high draft capital. If I were to place a quarterback in a tier of their own right now, it would be Josh Allen. If I wanted to say there was one above that, above the rest of them, I clearly think that Mahomes is out of that conversation now, depending on what they do at receiver. But obviously, even if they draft a rookie receiver we really like, we're not going to expect that player to replace Tyreek Hill's production, immediately. So this is going to have to be more of a team effort, a team lift for the Chiefs to be able to try to replace what they lost with Tyreek Hill. And the problem is they just don't have a lot of depth, right? Like when I look at hell, at least they could have gotten like Cedric Wilson or something out of the deal back, what's Miami going to do with Cedric Wilson now? Nothing. Like they were probably going to do nothing with him anyway. But I mean, it's like the Chiefs just don't have much because I don't think much of Mecole Hardman. They've got a tight end and a slot receiver.
How do you not ask for, and I know he's probably making a lot of money this year, it's the final year of his deal, but how do you not ask for like Devontae Parker back?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking. Do you get a player like that? It was probably related to salary. And I think teams are just pretty much out on Parker, I think at this point, just because he can't, it's availability. The guy could just never stay on the field. And you and I, we know that a player's injury prone until they're not. But I mean, I think NFL teams, I think there are players that play through injuries, right? And I don't think you can put Parker on that list. I think pretty much if Parker's dinged, you can't really use him.
Score one for the salary cap doesn't exist, guys. It kind of goes against all they're saying because, well, if the salary cap didn't exist, then Tyreek Hill would still be a Kansas City Chief. So now you're going to start seeing the impact, folks, of you got to pay Patrick Mahomes. You're paying Kelsey. They're paying a lot of linemen. You're paying Chris Jones a boatload of money. You can't pay everybody. And the biggest playmaker in fantasy football is now a Miami Dolphin. So one of your other quarterbacks in the top 8, Aaron Rodgers, is back with the pack. We assumed that would be the case, but he's coming back. It's now that Will Smith, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air gift, Dwain, where he walks in his living room and he's like, where the hell is everybody? Because Davante Adams is out of town. He's in Vegas now with his college bro, Derek Carr. So Aaron Rodgers, we'll break this situation down, is back in Green Bay on what at the time was the biggest guaranteed money for a quarterback, but there's nobody there. It's Aaron Rodgers, Robert Tonyan, a couple of running backs, and I don't know, Alan Lazard, me and you, our buddy Drew Davenport, maybe he's going to come swing through. They've got to draft some guys or make a play for somebody here. But so let's start there with Aaron Rodgers. He comes back. You've got him as QB8 over at PFF.com in your updated quarterback rankings. But I mean, there's nobody there.
Yeah, not a quarterback I'm going to be reaching for. Like it's still just Aaron Rodgers, so he's really he's in a tier with a bunch of guys, that are all around him. But I mean, you could make an argument that, a Russell Wilson or some of these guys that have more weapons around them could potentially have more upside than Aaron Rodgers this year. And again, so this is like the initial pass, like at these ranks, but Rodgers, he's probably going to come down a little bit for me. I want to see what they do in the draft. I know the most recent mock draft by Daniel Jeremiah, he had them like double tapping receiver, at both picks that they've got at the end of the first round. So I think that's a potential. We'll have to wait and see. They tendered Alan Lazard, like you mentioned. They brought Tonyan back. It's, again, kind of like what we just talked about with Tyreek Hill going away. None of these guys are going to replace Devante Adams, right? They're not good enough. And I like Alan Lazard. I like Randall Cobb. I think they're fine players. And it'll all just come down to ADP. Like if ADP stays down on Lazard, stays down on a guy like Cobb, and they only add one rookie receiver or something like that, I think there could be some potential value to be mined, out of these other players that are there. Aaron Jones is obviously a player we would talk about. You hear about it all the time. The Aaron Jones splits with and without Davante Adams, how much of a difference that makes for him in the passing game. So Jones could be someone that really benefits from the news of Davante Adams leaving. I haven't bumped him up my ranks yet just because I don't want to be going back and forth the whole time. Like I'm assuming the Packers are going to spend draft capital on a receiver. The other reason I haven't really moved Alan Lazard up that much, but Alan Lazard, like yards per route run, never been great. PFF receiving grade, never been great. Targets per route run, never been great. Those are all typical telltale indicators of a player that, wow, if their role expands, could they do more? He doesn't check any of those boxes. I like some things he does on film. I think he's a nice physical receiver. I think he's good in the run game. I think he can work interior inside from the slot. I think, he's not necessarily a vertical field stretcher, but like he is a pretty good contested catch guy. So I think with Aaron Rodgers as his number one, you could see him, get a 22% target share, something like that, but expecting much more than that. I just don't see it with Alan Lazard. You would have already seen it show up somewhere in his underlying measurables or metrics, right, that really help us predict when these players are going to break out. Now, again, anything can happen. Allen Lazard can go out there and just go nuts. Again, it'll just come back to ADP for me. So if Allen Lazard is going like round 11, 12, 13, you're going to be fine. But most likely what's going to happen with Lazard, with all of this, he's going to settle in that round 7 or 8 range, because that's usually where we see wide receiver rooms that are kind of wide open. We saw it last year with Marquez Callaway. We've seen it in the past, even with other former Packer players. Like, we've seen that. And I can't even, for whatever reason, I can't remember the slot receiver they had just a few years back that then left and went over to Detroit like the year after. Why am I blanking on this guy's name? Because I'm 45 years old now, Drake. That's why. Like, I'll be 45 this Friday. So it's
Look
just
at this.
like,
happy birthday to Mr. McFarland out here.
Yeah. But the brain, it's like, got to do more mental exercises, I guess. Anyway, it's going to drive me nuts now. I'll think of it as soon as the podcast is over. But anyway, like, we've seen these guys year after year after year that are just names, and we want to slot them in for all this work because there are these targets that are available, and it just doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work. Typically, for the guys it has worked for, again, there's some sort of leading indicator that we can feel good about, and Allen Lazard doesn't really have any of those.
I'm looking at a few things here in terms of the draft. There are 6 teams that have multiple first-round picks. There are 7 teams who do not have a first-round pick. If you want to go back and listen on our YouTube page to the wide receiver rookie preview show that we did, please go back in the archives and check that out. But we're talking about all these receivers, and we know now Kansas City's got to draft somebody. We're talking the Packers got to draft somebody. Packers have picks 22 and 28. Chiefs have pick 29 and 30. Oh, by the way, at the top of the draft, Texans have a pair of picks. They need receiver help. Jets have a pair. Giants, Eagles need somebody. They've got 3 picks. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of jockeying in this NFL draft to see who's going to move up. And usually it's a million quarterbacks going off the board. We could see a huge run on wide receivers because the need is just so prevalent now for wide receivers in the NFL. It's a passing league. So the other side of this trade, Dwain, is Davante Adams, who now goes to Vegas. He gets a monster 5-year contract. He's going to go hang out with Derek Carr. They're going to put mascara on, whatever Derek Carr likes to do. It's cool. He was wide receiver 4 coming off the board on Underdog. Now, I don't know if it won't go up, but how far do you think that drops, if it drops at all, in the eyes of drafters come redraft season? Because the name is the same, but you're going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. That's like you're driving a Ferrari and now you have a 10-speed.
The name I was trying to think of, Geronimo Allison, because it was driving me nuts. Anyway,
yes.
The guy that kind of crept into the top 8-9 rounds a few years back. And again, like, there's tons of other examples, but like, once my brain started going there, I couldn't stop. But yeah.
And whoever gets drafted there is going to be, people are going to go gaga over.
Well, I'll tell you what, like, I think Derek Carr, like, is the name to remember. Like, he was a borderline, he was a top 12 receiver to begin last year when he really had all of his weapons. Devante Adams is way better than what you had in Henry Ruggs. We saw the emergence of Hunter Renfro, who actually, if you look at, his PFF grades, even back to a rookie, like, he passed a really critical hurdle. It's basically a who's list of ever's been a good receiver in the league since we started tracking this stuff. But Hunter Renfro was above the grade of a 75 as a rookie. It also predicted Chris Godwin before he really had a full role. So I think we're looking at a potentially loaded Raiders passing game. We know their defense isn't very good. We know they play in a tough division. Like, Derek Carr could be sneaky. I think Derek Carr, like, is going to be right there in a tier of guys. Like, you should probably put him somewhere right there around Matthew Stafford. Like, I think that's really where Carr belongs to be at this point. As far as Davante Adams goes, he's definitely going to have more target competition. I would expect him to lead the way. I think that the Raiders will become a more pass-heavy offense. Derek Carr does kind of fit that same Tom Brady mold of those quick, type passes that we've seen Brady use in the past. Not saying Derek Carr is Tom Brady, folks. We know this. Tom Brady's a freaking cyborg.
But it's Josh McDaniels' offense. Yeah.
It's Josh McDaniels' offense. So I think you're going to see a ton of Darren Waller plus Hunter Renfro plus Davante Adams all on the field together. I do not think Hunter Renfro will come off the field like we've seen in the past. Now, I was really excited about Hunter Renfro this offseason because I was thinking, man, this guy has a chance for 120 receptions. You add Davante Adams in, now we're probably capping him again, even though he's going to be on the field more. I think Hunter Renfro will be on the field for 90% of the pass plays this year. We've seen Josh McDaniels McDaniels do that with Julian Edelman. We've seen him do it with Wes Welker. We've seen him do it with Jacoby Myers. Like, he finds a way to keep these guys on the field, even when they go to 12 and 21 personnel. So 2 tight ends or a fullback, right? And
it's an inside-out offense. I remember Charlie Weiss talking about that. He created the offense, and he was talking about it on Sirius XM. And he goes, this is built from the inside out. It starts with the slot and the tight ends. Darren Waller, Hunter Renfro. Boom. I mean, Hunter Renfro was number 17 in PPR that was in standard. Let me bump it up to PPR. And Hunter Renfro was wide receiver 11 last year.
Yeah. So I had Renfro inside my top 24. I had him at 20, but after this news, I dropped him to 37 just because it's Davante Adams. Like, I think this hurts all of them. Davante Adams is now worth less. Hunter Renfro is now worth less than what he was going to be. And Darren Waller is also worth a little bit less than what he was going to be before. But it's hard to move them really in the ranks because, again, you start looking at the names. So Darren Waller and George Kittle, I really have in a tier together. I've got Andrews, Kelsey, and Pitts right above that. Well, then if you look at the tier below, TJ Hawkinson, Dallas Goedert, Rob Gronkowski, assuming that he's going to re-sign with the Bucs, Dalton Schultz. Like, I mean, I'm not moving Darren Waller down into that tier. He's still going to stay above those because, we've seen him be, an elite talent. We've seen him do things. Obviously, Gronk has done these things, but we've seen him do things that TJ Hawkinson and Dallas Goedert and Dalton Schultz have never been able to do yet in their career. So with Waller, I still like him, but I think it takes the upside off of each one of these guys as far as the targets and yardage goes, which is the main thing we're predicting in fantasy. But the wild card here is, does the offense all of a sudden blossom with this additional third option that really makes it tough for defenses? Because, little known fact, Davante Adams, the most doubled or help coverage player in the league last year by far, was number one. Darren Waller, 19th most double coverage or help coverage player in the league. Hunter Renfro saw the second most bracket coverage, which is a true double team, inside and out or over and under, behind only Davante Adams. So they've got 3 of the players that are most double covered in the whole league. So it's clear that opposing defenses are concerned with all of these players. Now they're all on the field together because you're not going to have a coordinator that's silly and gets Hunter Renfro off the field. He's going to keep him out there with these other 2 guys. But I think what's going to happen, Drake, Derek Carr is the type of quarterback. He's going to drop back. He's going to go through his reads. He's going to go through what the progression tells him to do. And I think that's going to mean more of this spread out across all of these guys. I still think Adams, ends up in the 26-28% target share range. I think you'll see Darren Waller somewhere around 20-22%. I think you probably get Hunter Renfro around the 20% mark. I thought before Renfro truly had an opportunity to push, for 27-28% of the target share. I just don't think that's possible now with Davante Adams there.
You play in a lot of tight end premium leagues, but I want to focus let's talk about one tight end league here. Darren Waller on Underdog. ADP is at the end of round 3. He's tight end 4 behind Kelsey, Andrews, and Pitts. Now, we know Derek Carr. He doesn't like taking sacks. He doesn't like throwing picks. He drops back. He gets rid of that damn thing. But with the addition of Davante Adams, are you taking maybe Kittle, Hawkinson, Gronk over Waller? Do you like Waller at tight end 4?
I still like Waller at 4. I put him and Kittle in the same boat, really. Like, they're both in offenses that have multiple weapons to get the ball to. I think that the Raiders are going to throw the ball a little bit more than the 49ers, but you probably trust Kyle Shanahan as the coordinator still a little bit more than Josh McDaniels to this point, just knowing that we haven't seen enough from McDaniels, to be honest, like without Brady. He's never really been much without Brady. Did a nice job with Mac Jones last year, but not necessarily a fantasy-friendly type offense, right? So I think Waller and Kittle go together in a tier below the other guys. Kyle Pitts, I felt better about with Matt Ryan than Marcus Mariota. I think that definitely hurts. So maybe it is Kelsey and Andrews really in a tier of their own. Then you get maybe Pitts kind of in a sub-tier. And then you get Darren Waller or Kittle, or maybe you just group Pitts in with Waller and Kittle. The one thing with Pitts is, even though he's going to have some challenges at quarterback play, I'm not a Mariota fan, to be honest. Like, never's done as much as he should. Even with the opportunities he's been given, I've heard some people say that, he has never been, built around. I just, guy takes way too many sacks, doesn't push the ball down the field enough. I think there's a lot of concerns. I think you can manage with him but I think the Falcons defense is so terrible. They're going to be getting their doors blown off, right? And Mariota is a guy you really want to keep in a game script that you can control, keep the defense off balance. And Arthur Smith's really good at that. Like, he's a really good play caller, really good at mixing things up. So I think that's a positive. But overall for Pitts, like, man, going to Mariota, I know that's not our topic here, but that's a downgrade from what you had with Matt Ryan. But the thing with Pitts is, like, you could see 180 targets. Like, it really could happen. With what he did as a rookie, like, I just don't know where else. It's him and Cordell Patterson. Like, that's the offense right now.
Well, let's kind of stay there. There's some moving parts around that team, obviously, because their quarterback's on the move. You just referenced it. Marcus Mariota is going to be the starting quarterback unless they draft somebody in April in Atlanta. So Marcus Mariota.
Real quick, Drake, like, this is kind of coming because, we're just doing this on the fly, kind of like, so this is kind of coming to me like, and I haven't sat down and plotted my strategy like at each position yet. Like, I'm starting to firm those things up. They're, I just think about them a lot. I draft, I experiment, I look at other draft boards, and maybe kind of where I'm landing is I like Andrew and Kelsey. I'm not going to feel a need to force it with Pitts or Waller versus what else you could be drafting at that
36 spot right at the end of
and
three.
I even think
I don't
with
like
Kittle, I like Kittle, but again, I don't know that I feel I have to force it. He's going pick 39 right now on Underdog because here's why. Like, they're not that far ahead of the next tier down at this point with the questions we have around them with Hawkinson, Goddard, Schultz. Gronk will definitely move up. Like, Gronk, if you're drafting right now in best ball, you should just be drafting Gronk. He's coming back. He's going to play for the Bucs. And even if he doesn't, like, he's basically free. The last time I checked on Underdog, his ADP was like 180.
183.3.
There you go. So, like, you should draft Gronk all day because that's going to be money in the bag. Like, if you're drafting right now on Underdog, be drafting rookie running backs that are going lower than what grinding the mocks say. So guys that are supposed to go in the first 3 rounds that are not going, say, in the first 6, 7, 8 rounds of the draft. So you've got guys like Kenneth Walker. We've talked about him in the past, but like Gronk is another name. You really feel good that he's coming back. And as soon as the news happens, boom, the ADP is going to shoot up. He's going to be right up there with Hawkinson, Goddard, Schultz. He'll be going somewhere between 70 and 90. So you should definitely be pulling the trigger on that. But kind of where I was going, like macro strategy on tight end, it's probably Andrews and Kelsey going to want to have some exposure to the other guys, Pitts, Waller, and Kittle, but they have enough concerns now that I'm not going to feel a need to force it with those players rather than just taking a guy like Hawkinson, just taking a guy like Schultz or even a Gronk.
And let's talk about Matt Ryan. He leaves Atlanta. He goes to the Colts. And I think everyone likes to say how smart the Colts are and Chris Ballard there now trying to turn that team around. But in my mind, no one has failed their team more than the Colts front office. You look at their week 1 starting quarterbacks, and 2018 was Andrew Luck. And then they can't control, hey, Andrew Luck leaves, and he kind of leaves them high and dry in late August when he retired. But then they went Phillip Rivers, Brissett, Wentz, and now Matt Ryan. You're telling me in 4 years you couldn't draft or work out a deal for a better long-term quarterback than Phillip Rivers or Jacoby Brissett or Carson Wentz and now Matt Ryan? I mean, let's be honest. You're in that loaded AFC. Where's Matt Ryan really going to get you? He's going to be there for a year or 2. You're paying this monstrous contract. So I just want to get that off my chest. Colts front office, terrible job. You had Luck and Manning fall into your laps because you were horrendous. And everyone goes, oh, look at the quarterbacks they drafted. It was no, great shakes that you did. It was.
I think getting a good quarterback is really hard, though. I think it's hard to go get one of these guys. They're not normally available. Like, this is the season I think you could put it on them and say, well, why didn't you go get Russell Wilson? Why didn't you make a bigger push if you thought Aaron Rodgers was potentially, on the market? So, you could argue last year, if there was an opportunity for Stafford, why didn't they go, push harder on Stafford? But there's a lot of people that were torn on Stafford too, right, at the time. So I think, I get it. I agree and I think it's frustrating because they really do have a good offensive line. They've got a nice running game. They've got a pretty good defense. They've done a lot of other things right. I think it really is. It's tough to go find these quarterbacks. And I think they tried to make do with what they could. The Brissett thing, we all knew that wasn't going to work. But to your point, like, that was the year that Andrew Luck left. Like, they were kind of in a lurch. The next year, they tried to make it work for a season with Phillip Rivers. what else were they going to do? Like, I don't really, I'm sure they've explored other options. I'm not trying to make excuses for them. It's just, people don't trade away good quarterbacks, hardly ever. Like, this Russell Wilson thing is like, we just don't see it. That and the Stafford trade these last 2 years, it just don't happen that often. So it's kind of hard to really go at them that hard. And it's not like these late first round quarterbacks are all hitting either, right? Which they haven't been drafting early in the first round. So I think they've kind of been stuck in that no man's land, which makes it really hard. It's like, hey, we're a good enough team that we don't really have a great pick, but we know we still don't have a great quarterback, right? So we're kind of stuck. Like, what do? We have this roster that we want to be competitive with, but at the same time, we know it's going to be really tough for us to go far. So I think Matt Ryan is going to be similar to your point, like what we saw with Phillip Rivers. I think
he's
they did the best
for fantasies. He's never going to run.
He's better than Carson
sacked
Wentz.
a million times. Sure,
he's better than Carson Wentz.
So are you and I. The guy I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll get on to actual teams with talent, is Michael Pittman, because underdog ADP, he's wide receiver 26. There ain't much else around him. I mean, you're going to get our guy Paris Campbell if he can stay healthy. Maybe they draft somebody. But Michael Pittman, I think, has a real opportunity to go off this year with a quality, NFL arm talent in Matt Ryan. So I just want to get your quick thoughts on Michael Pittman, and maybe is he being drafted too low right now at wide receiver 26? He's getting picked about 58th overall. Is that there a buying opportunity right now while everybody's mind is kind of elsewhere?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I've got him right now sitting at wide receiver 23. So I've got him inside my top 24. He's actually done a lot of the things that we want to see from a young receiver as far as like some of the underlying metrics and things. So yeah, I'm on board, with Pittman. He had a 26% target share in his second season last year. Yards per route run were nearly at a 1.95. PFF receiving grade of 79.9. So like, he's checking a lot of boxes by doing those things. It's just a matter of the Colts run the ball all the time. Now, having said that, like, they had the fourth most plays last year in the league, percentage of plays where they led by 4 or more points. So they were really fortunate from a game script standpoint. That's a pretty extreme number. They led by that 40% of the time. So you're not going to see that. Most likely that number, even on a good team, like that number is 30%, 25%. It's not something you consistently stay in that range every year. So I think just by the nature of, things balancing out from a game script standpoint, you see more passing attempts this year from the Colts. They'll probably trust Matt Ryan a little more. They're not going to center the offense around Matt Ryan, to your point. It's still going to be centered around playing defense. They're going to try and use their run game. But I do think game scripts could be enough, and the upgrade of Matt Ryan, from Carson Wentz, and the accuracy that you should get. I think that those are positive things for Pittman, and I have him, like I said, inside my top 24. And he's a guy that I don't mind hitting the select button on. Like, it's really easy just to say, yeah, I'm going to take Michael Pittman. I don't want to be overexposed to him. I don't want to have like 40-50% rostership of Michael Pittman at his price, but I definitely want to, like, a fifth of my teams to have Michael Pittman. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if I got to like 25% on him.
Michael Pittman last year in PPR finished as wide receiver 21, averaged 13.5 points per game. Again, that's with Carson Wentz at quarterback. So how about the Deshaun Watson news? You and I haven't gotten a chance to talk about this yet. Deshaun Watson traded to the Cleveland Browns, new 5-year, $230 million contract. He's going to get $184 million of that over the first 4 years. A major bump for them. People get all crazy about the way the contract is structured. Listen, at the end of the day, good, bad, or indifferent, your thoughts on Deshaun Watson. He's going to play football. We are here. It's a fantasy football show. So that's what we're going to talk about, is him on the field in Cleveland. Jarvis Landry's got to be scratching his head right now. Go, why the hell did I just get out of here? Like, man, we finally have a quarterback. So we've got Amari Cooper in town now because the Cowboys had a little bit of a salary cap issue, and you're obviously very familiar with him as a Cowboys fan. So here we are, Deshaun Watson in town. We've got the two great running backs in Chubb and Hunt. We've got David Njoku back on the franchise tag, Amari Cooper. Maybe we draft somebody. Donovan Peoples-Jones is there. What are your thoughts on the Cleveland Browns 2022?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me to get like super excited about them just because they don't have that many weapons. But obviously, like if you have Deshaun Watson on the field, you're going to be a better team. Like, there's no comparison between him and Baker Mayfield. Like, there's not. Like, there's no point. Like, it's not even a conversation to have. Like, so we won't even go there. But when I look at a guy, I think the guy you got to think about the most, obviously Watson's number one, and you can't talk about Watson without the fact that, we got to talk about this. Like, he's got, 22 pending, civil suits.
Sure.
And look, like, I'm not a legal expert and I'm not here to judge anyone, but like with that many, like, it's just hard for me to believe that there's not something there. Like, it's just, and I get it. Like, there is the chance that there's nothing. And like Deshaun Watson is totally just getting, these folks are out for money. I guess that's in the a range of possibilities too. I just think statistically speaking, like 22 women coming forward, most likely, like, there's just something there. And then, like, even when you dig into the further details of the case, it's not like it was all just massage parlor stuff. There was other things going on. So there's going to be a suspension of some sort. I don't know what it's going to be because I'm not the expert. Is it going to be 4 games, 6 games, 8 games? I know we've got these previous like precedents, like looking at Zeke, looking at Ben Roethlisberger, but those were like one accusation, not multiple. So again, like, the league could do anything. Like, would it completely surprise you if they suspended Deshaun Watson for the whole year? Like, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I feel like there's such a wide range of outcome that, like, I don't know. Like, so with Watson, what I've done with him in the ranks, I've moved him up inside the top 12 because it's basically once you get to that range where you're looking at the Staffords and the Trey Lances and the Derek Carrs, and you're making a decision. Do I want to take a known commodity like a Stafford, Derek Carr with an upgrade, and I just want to have kind of this low-end QB1, maybe upside of like a mid-range QB1, high-end QB2 to mid-range QB1, or do I want to take the big upside with the rushing with a guy like Trey Lance that I know could pop into the top 5 if everything goes right for him, even though we didn't see anything from him last year. Justin Fields kind of in the same conversation. And then there's Deshaun Watson, right? And he's a different flavor of risk to those two guys. Those two guys you haven't seen that much, but they have the legs. Watson, has the legs. Watson, has the arm talent. Watson, has the ability to read NFL defenses and can do a lot, but you just don't know if he's going to be playing. So I kind of bucket him in that same range with like the Trey Lances and Justin Fields. Like, you're kind of taking a swing there, on the upside. And I don't blame people. Like, from a fantasy strategy standpoint, like, that could really, pay off for you. And there's plenty of opportunities if you want to draft another quarterback later, because Derek Carr's not going to go that high. Like, you can get Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, who now has another weapon. Like, you could draft all those guys 3 or 4 rounds, 5 rounds later, right? And they can carry you through the first part of the season. Like, a little tougher in best ball because you're trying to, you're usually, 2 quarterbacks are vying, each week to give you your high score unless you draft one of the very top guys. But like in a season-long single quarterback league, I think that's definitely a viable strategy. You could put Watson in that same range with like a Trey Lance. Now, as far as Amari Cooper goes, obviously, like with Deshaun Watson, like the quality of his targets are going to be better than what would have been there with a Baker Mayfield. My concern with Amari Cooper, though, Drake, is just really, I just think he is what he is at this point. Like, Amari Cooper's had so many chances in his career to become an alpha. It's just not happening. He's not going to do it. Like, is there a chance it happens? Yeah, but I wouldn't invest myself from a fantasy perspective and thinking that's going to happen. I mean, the guy, here are his target shares, his adjusted target shares, even this adjust for the games that he missed for his career: 20%, 21%, 18%, 21%, 19%, 20%, 16%. So it's just, he's never been an alpha. He's never been able to crack that. And then when you look at his, you want to count just for, hey, let's just take the time he was on the field, targets per route run, 21%, 21%, 20%. He did with Dallas pop for 30% one season when he first got there, but then it went away, 22%, 21%, 19%. So when I look at Cooper, like, I think he does a great job of creating, separation. If you look at him in the PFF metrics, like, he's in the top 8 single man coverage of creating a step or more. And if you think, oh, well, separation's just graded too differently by everyone, well, fine. Then just look at his targets on those plays. His targets per route run, he was in the top 8. So when quarterbacks see he gets single man coverage, they know that he's probably going to be open. I think the problem for a guy like Amari Cooper, Drake, is when he doesn't get open on his separation. Right. Yeah. He's not a great tracker of the football down the field. He's not an above the rim, win it for you like DeAndre Hopkins type player. He doesn't do those other things. He's nice after the catch, not as good as he once was, this offense is going to help him. It's going to see a lot of play action. I'm going to see some open space under Kevin Stefanski, who's basically running that old Gary Kubiak offense, which is a variant of the Kyle Shanahan offense. I think there's going to be some good things there. But again, when you account for the Browns being a run balanced to maybe pass balanced now with Watson their team, and the fact that Cooper's never really been able to break through. I mean, I've seen some of this stuff like, oh, this is the year. Cooper's going to have 25%, 30% target share. I think he's shown us he doesn't have enough in it. He's really good at the thing he does, but he doesn't do the second thing, the third thing, the fourth thing that you see these other guys that can truly dominate target shares, which, by the way, they're pretty rare. We act like these guys that can gain 30% target share grow on trees. They just don't. Like, there's not many of them that can do it. And so with Amari Cooper, I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Now, having said that, it still bumps him up my ranks just because a target from Deshaun Watson is worth way more than a target from Baker Mayfield. So he's inside my top 24 again. He was outside of my top 24, but not a guy that I'm going to be reaching for because I think he's got some ungodly ceiling that somebody's wanting to pitch to me on Twitter.
Amari Cooper going off the board in underdog, pick 48. He's wide receiver 21 right now. There's not a lot.
And I think that's about right, Drake. I think that's a pretty good market read on ADP for Amari Cooper.
If he's your wide receiver 2, okay. If he's your wide receiver 3, okay, now I'm really enjoying that. It's just a matter of how you're going to build your roster. Let me ask you about these running backs here. There's been some talk maybe Kareem Hunt gets traded. You know, who knows? With this offseason, the guy could be president by the end of the week for all we know. But Nick Chubb, he's going off the board at running back 11, underdog ADP of 21. You add in now a quarterback that can actually throw the football. Do you wonder that maybe they're going to get more things created down the football field? Maybe we don't have to lean on Nick Chubb as much. Also, devil's advocate, maybe it opens up the offense a little more. Now, you've got to pay attention on the outside. Who knows who else they'll get out there to run routes, but maybe it opens up some holes for Nick Chubb because it's not such a cookie-cutter offense, and you know they're going to pound the rock down your throat with Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I think overall it's still a positive for Nick Chubb because I think you have an offense that could score more touchdowns. That could be a more efficient offense with Deshaun Watson. And we know that Nick Chubb's going to get a good portion, right, of the touchdowns for the team. Like, that's something we can feel pretty good about. And he still has the ability to break long plays, which is really what you're looking for. If you're going to draft a running back that's not involved in the receiving game, you want a run-heavy team, which I think the Browns will still stay balanced. I don't expect them to go full on, into this, just we're going to throw the ball all the time. They just don't have the weapons to do it. You got Amari Cooper and David Njoku and Harrison Bryant. Donovan Peoples-Jones is okay, whatever. Like, he's a fine guy that can stretch the field, but you're not going to build your offense around Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think they're going to want to be a run-balanced team, but they're going to add Deshaun Watson's legs into the mix. And I think they want to create big plays, right? They want to create big plays off of play action, big plays in the running game. They want explosive plays, and it's not necessarily going to come through, just because we're going to drop back and pass all the time. So I think overall this is fine for Chubb, but they did re-sign Dearness Johnson. You do still have Kareem Hunt sitting there, and Dearness Johnson, re-signing him, even if Hunt moves on, it makes you think, well, they're probably going to use Dearness Johnson in the receiving role, even if Kareem Hunt moves on. So that's still just going to be a thing for Nick Chubb you're going to have to deal with. It's really tough to take Chubb, especially in PPR leagues, for where he goes in ADP with the receivers that are sitting there. Once you get into a standard format, I saw Shirley's in the room. I know she plays standard. In a standard format, I think Nick Chubb's a lot easier, to stomach, and you can build some roster construction strategies around actually taking Nick Chubb and making him part of your draft plans versus in a PPR league and even half PPR. It's just a lot tougher to take Nick Chubb. I will say, if Nick Chubb, for whatever reason, if Dearness Johnson wasn't the receiving back and they got rid of Kareem Hunt, hands down, top 3 back, with a chance to be the number 1 back in the league. He is undoubtedly a hyper talented individual, still way up there in everything we care about: missed tackles force, yards after contact, explosive rush rate. He's in the top of all of those, across the board, everything you want. He's there, just not involved in the passing game.
If I could play a little fantasy booking right here, I would, if I'm the Seahawks and the Browns, and I would try to work something out here to get Kareem Hunt to Seattle, and then maybe get Tyler Lockett down to the Browns. But now the Seahawks went and they re-signed Rashad Penny, so that probably won't happen. Funny note here, Dwayne, we talked about all these teams that have first-round picks and need receivers. Well, the Browns and the Seahawks that we just mentioned here, neither have a first-round pick. So, the Browns, they got to find somebody to come on the outside next to Amari Cooper. Well, you're not going to have a first-round pick to do it with.
Yeah.
Speaking of teams that don't have to worry about wide receivers, though, the Denver Broncos, they made the big move, pulled the trigger. They've got Russell Wilson now at quarterback, realizing you're never going to win in the NFL with Drew Lock, with Teddy Bridgewater, with these scrub quarterbacks. All these teams, they're just trying to get by. It's almost like baseball where teams aren't trying to spend any money and win. They're just collecting the TV cash. But Denver's all in now. You got Russell Wilson. Let's not forget, Dwayne, Russell Wilson isn't that far removed from a back-to-back 4,000-yard seasons. He forced his way out of Seattle. Now he lands with Courtland Sutton, who, if he's healthy, I think is going to be a huge steal in drafts. He's currently going off the board at 96 overall. You got Jerry Jeudy underneath. You've got Albert O at tight end. They shipped out Noah Fant as part of that trade. We've got Javonte Williams. I mean, there's a lot to like here in Denver, not to mention Tim Patrick, who could be super sneaky down the line. So talk to me about this Denver team. Where do you see Russell Wilson and some of these receivers coming off the board?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great situation for Denver. You've made a massive upgrade, to your point, at quarterback, and you've got plenty of weapons around him. You've got Jerry Jeudy, who's going to play out of the slot. You've got Courtland Sutton, going to be stretching fields down, stretching things outside down the field, a great contested catch guy. I'm going to catch some of those moon balls from Russell Wilson. Jeudy can also work deeper down the field in the slot. He's not like a speedster like Tyler Lockett, but he's still fast. Then you have Tim Patrick on the outside. Plus you got Albert O at the tight end spot. So I think, arguably this will be the best overall group of wide receivers that Russ has played with. Like, are the top two guys better than Lockett and Metcalf? No. Like, I wouldn't say Jeudy and Sutton are better than those two guys. But once you add in what you have with Tim Patrick, once you add in what you have with Albert O, Javonte Williams out of the backfield, I think overall, right, he's just joining a better offensive group. And so having Vic Fangio gone, right, the defensive coordinator really with his thumb all over the offense, I do think this will be another offense that wants to create explosive plays, but I think there is a door that could open where they just really do let Russ cook, and they just open things up because they play in a division where they're going to have to score a lot of points. Now, Denver does have a decent defense, but we know how inconsistent defenses can be. A lot of times we may think, wow, this thing is going to be stacked, and all of a sudden, like, it's a bottom 20 defense. A bottom 10 defense outside of the top 20. So it's just a situation where there are going to be a lot of different things that happen with the game script, but overall you have to feel good just because they play in the AFC West and the competition that they're going to have with Herbert. They're going to have Mahomes. You get Derek Carr now with 3 really good weapons. So I think it's going to be a situation where there is still a lot of passing that's needed. I think Russell Wilson is a guy that I want plenty of exposure to with these weapons and the fact that they really could decide to let him do more than what we've seen from Seattle. And look, here's the bottom line. And what they did to him last year in Seattle, like the plays they were running per game, it was atrocious. The Seahawks last year ran basically 2 games less worth of plays than the NFL average team.
Oh my
That's how slow they were. That's how bad their pace was and how few plays they were running per game. 2 full games they ran less than the average NFL team versus the good NFL teams that ran a lot of plays, like the Chiefs and the Bills. I mean, they were 3 and 4 games. It was the equivalent of Russell Wilson playing 4 less games than these other teams. I don't think you're going to have that now. Am I saying this is going to be the super fast up tempo? No, that's not something we've necessarily seen from Hackett. At a minimum, I think Russell Wilson, at least gets back to NFL average though, right? And the number of plays and dropbacks that he gets to have per game. So with these weapons, I'm super excited about Wilson. I moved Sutton and I moved Jeudy up, obviously on the news of getting Russell Wilson. And how could you not? Like, I've talked about it before, like quarterbacks, people probably overrate it overall, like how much they matter for a fantasy receiver, not for real NFL production. But like in these cases where you make these huge jumps, like Drew Lock was really bad enough that like it really hurts you. Teddy Bridgewater's been bad enough that it really hurts you. And when you talk about a move up to a guy like Russell Wilson, obviously that's a big improvement. So yeah, as far as, where I have those guys, I've got both of them right now actually sitting right next to each other. And I can see arguments for both. I really can. Some people I see really pounding the table and like making arguments that it has to be Jeudy or it has to be Sutton. I think it could go either way, Drake, and most likely both are going to see an improvement. Just like what we saw, in Seattle, right? One week it's DK Metcalf, the next week it's Tyler Lockett. So you do hope they have some more volume, though, which they should have, which enables, which should offset the fact that you also are going to be feeding Alberto some and Tim Patrick some. I do think Tim Patrick's pretty sneaky for a guy that you can get the latest in drafts. But right now, I have Judy as my wide receiver 27, and I have Cortland Sutton as my wide receiver 28.
Alberto, by the way, the news has not caught up with underdog drafters. His ADP on underdog is tight end 33. You're coming off the board at 234. I mean, that has to change. That's got to be just a million old drafts factored in to the equation. Quickly, before we do a little rapid fire stuff here, Javonte Williams, they haven't re-signed yet Melvin Gordon, at least while we're on the air. Who knows in this wild offseason. If they don't re-sign Melvin Gordon and it's just a rookie and a journeyman, whoever, and it's the Javonte Williams show, you've got him in your ranks, I believe, at running back 11. Would you move him up, or do you think that's a fair spot?
Well, yeah. I mean, my original ranks had him at RB2, and that was my original ranks were just kind of based on a bunch of assumptions saying this assumes, Melvin Gordon's not back. Antonio Gibson, this assumes JD McKissic's not back, just to kind of get people's juices flowing around what could happen in free agency. Mm-hmm. But now that we're actually moving and people are starting to draft, like my rankings, I've got to make them more something someone could draft off of, right? So if it kind of makes sense, my first pass at rankings were in one thought process. My rankings, the way I'm doing them now, are really try to help people. I got to kind of split things like on the likelihood of something happening. And that's really why Javonte Williams, is number 11 right now. I've just got him behind guys that we know are probably going to be the lead backs on their offense: Fournette, Kamara, James Conner, Joe Mixon. But then I have him above DeAndre Swift, who's probably going to be sharing, Nick Chubb, going to be sharing, Saquon's just taking a step back. You got Akers, Montgomery, Aaron Jones, all these other guys. So Williams, he slots right there, kind of almost like in a little tier of his own, because it's saying that, look, if Melvin Gordon doesn't come back, which the further we wait and that we get away from Melvin Gordon not being signed, the more likely it is he comes back, in my opinion, right? Because it's just going to mean there's no market for him. The Broncos have already said we want him back. You know how that conversation went. Hey, man, we want you back, but we're not going to pay you a lot.
Here's $8.
Yeah, exactly. And so nobody's giving him an offer. So he's probably going to come back. I mean, I would say right now, if I had to bet on where Melvin Gordon's going to land, obviously this doesn't mean it's a slam dunk. I would say it's probably going to be the Broncos. So that's what's baked in. If Melvin Gordon were to be gone, Javonte Williams would be my number 2 running back again. It would go Jonathan Taylor, Javonte Williams. Then it would go CMC. Then it would go Austin Eckler. That would be my top 4. Derrick Henry would come in at 5. Then you get Najee, Dalvin, Leonard Fournette. I mean, Leonard Fournette's a guy we haven't talked about yet, but
we'll get there. We're going to hit you. So we're at the 1 hour mark of the show. We're going to get Dwain out of here in a few minutes. I want to do some rapid fire. I'm going to throw a topic at you and a player situation.
Yeah, the audience is wanting you to drink, I think, Drake. Come on, Drake. It's 5:00 somewhere.
Well, yeah, all right. Well,
you're letting everybody down.
I'll throw it a topic at Dwain, and I'll go hit my mini fridge behind the bar here.
Right,
for you guys watching on YouTube. And I hope you guys are coming onto the YouTube channel. Search Fantasy Football Hustle. Make sure you're subscribed. Comment on the shows. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on iTunes or wherever. And if you're following us on Twitter, I'm at Drake Fantasy. Dwayne's, of course, at Dwain McFarland. The show is at FF Hustle. Anywhere you can find a podcast, that's where you're going to find the hustle. So, all right, let me hit you with a couple of rapid fire things while I get my drink. The first of them being Carson Wentz to the Washington Commanders. What does this do for Terry McLaurin? And you can also mix in your feelings quickly on JD McKissic coming back and stifling all the love for Antonio Gibson. Ready? Time for a beer. Go.
All right. Yeah. So as far as Wentz goes and Terry McLaurin and the offensive weapons, it's an upgrade. It's just not a big one. We've already seen this with Wentz. We're just to the point now where, he's an average to below average quarterback. So I think, we could get a few more deep shots down the field to Terry McLaurin. No, you're good. But it's not something that makes me wild about, Terry McLaurin, moving him way up the board. Honestly, this didn't move the needle that much for me. The JD McKissic thing was obviously huge. In my first run of my rankings this offseason, which I was talking about a minute ago, where I just made these hyper aggressive assumptions. If X happens, this is what, the rank's going to be. Antonio Gibson was in my top 5. because he would have been a full every down back, only a third-year guy. We know that he's got, explosive traits, really great in the receiving game. But McKissic changing his mind, coming back from Buffalo, like completely. Even though you still hear Washington saying, "No, we're going to use Antonio Gibson more on passing downs this season." Well, if you were going to do that, why'd you re-sign J.D. McKissic? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And what they gave McKissic, they paid him a decent amount. It's not like something that's going to break the bank from an overall salary cap standpoint. But, they paid him a decent little amount of money. And so I think J.D. McKissic's going to keep all the 2-minute offense, going to keep most of the long down and distance work. And so with Antonio Gibson, for me, at this point, it's just really tough. So I dropped him down. He's at running back 20 now for me. So I'd rather take a shot on Breece Hall. I'd rather take Travis Etienne. I would rather take Aaron Jones if they don't, do anything big at receiver for the Packers, knowing what we could see in that receiving game. Like, I think he's in the tier with all of those guys. Like, I think he belongs in the same tier as David Montgomery. You could probably, as long as the 49ers don't do something else, Elijah Mitchell belongs in that tier. Like, he's kind of sitting there with all those guys. But just, man, J.D. McKissic's so good in the passing game, really caps his upside.
Of course, I go and I grab the first beer in the cooler, and it's a 8.5% Southern Tier 2X IPA.
Yeah, halfway through the beer, and Drake's already tanked.
God, I hope I don't have to bring the kids anywhere. It's 5 o'clock as we record this now. All right, so Tom Brady surprises us all. He returns. He saw the state of the NFC, and he goes, "Oh my God, like I could win this in my sleep." So he was QB3 in most scoring formats. His running back, Leonard Fournette, surprised us all. He was running back. Let me get you the PPR here. And he was running back 5. He's back in the fold. They're running it back. We've got Russell Gage now helping out in the slot. You've still got Evans. You've got Godwin, who they franchised. So big things expected in just a terrible, terrible NFC for the Colts. What do you expect? Not the Colts, the Bucs. What do you expect from Tampa Bay? Probably more of the same in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, you got Tom Brady going against a bunch of bad quarterbacks. Like, it's just like the Bucs are going to easily win this division unless there's severe injuries or anything like that. Obviously, that would come into play, and by severe, I mean injury to Tom Brady. If there's not an injury to Tom Brady, it's hard to find a scenario where the Bucs don't win the division. Again, anything's possible, but I think that's as big of a lock as you can get, even though they've lost some guys on the offensive line. Man, the big news here, like you mentioned the Russell Gage thing, but I just have to start really with Fournette. Fournette last year really forced his way into taking over a near every down role. They still rotated other guys in with Ronald Jones and Gio, but not that much. But in the games, man, where Fournette truly got all the work, where he was an 80% snap guy, I mean, it's like top 5 finishes all over the place. And so Fournette, he was the RB6 last year. And I don't typically say this about a back, that's going to be 28. He'll be 27.7, I think, when the season starts, but he'll turn 28 during the year.
So what are you, 44.9 right now?
Yeah, I guess I'm 44.999 at this point. I'll let you go do the math, but yeah, with Fournette, it's just, there's upside even from where, he finished as RB6 last year. He's in a really good offense. If he's going to get to handle all the passing downs, he's going to get the short down and distance stuff. We'll have to see what else they do. Keyshawn Vaughn does not scare me in the passing game. I think he'll probably come in every third or fourth drive, spell Fournette on early downs. Has not had a good pass blocking grade, has not had a good PFF receiving grade, not a good targets per route run out of the backfield. And we know how Tom Brady is. He wants to be able to trust these guys coming out of the backfield. Now we'll see. Tampa could still do some other things, but the nice thing with Fournette is even when he was in those games where he was seeing between 55 and 65% of the snaps and not quite getting all the routes, he was still heavily targeted. Did you know that Fournette, this was crazy to me when I went and did this research, and it wasn't something I really intended to find. I was just looking at some different things on Fournette. So here's the list of running backs that have averaged or that have had 20% targets per route run over their first 5 or 4 out of their first 5 seasons in the NFL. And one of these names doesn't sound like, a couple of these names sound like they shouldn't belong. Several of them are going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But
is Alvin OJ Kamara. One of the names?
No.
Oh, okay.
Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, Damian Williams, DeMarco Murray, Gio Bernard, Jalen Richard, James White, Kareem Hunt, Nyheim Hines, Theo Riddick, all receiving backs besides DeMarco Murray. And then there's Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette, like, is in that group. So maybe I've just not paid enough attention to, like, he actually is good in the receiving game. The other thing that caught my attention is he's not a negative ADOT player. Most running backs, it's just, hey, swing pass, check down, like it's -1 yards, behind the line of scrimmage where they catch it. He's actually been at 0 or above the last 3 years, which means he's getting integrated into routes further down the field. So I think we're probably sleeping a little bit on Leonard Fournette's ability in the passing game, which is probably why the Bucs were willing to go ahead and give him the 3 years and do what they did. Now, he is getting older, but he's still well under the 1,500 touches. But right now, I've got Fournette number 7 in my ranks. And it's scary when you get a back that's a little older and you put him there, but he's still well under the touch mark. And he plays in an elite offense. Typically, this is the type of back that I would probably avoid, but I would make an exception for Fournette because of what I saw with his involvement in the passing game and because of the offense that he plays on.
You're sitting in a PPR.
Russell Gage, really good player. Wow, like really popped in like these single man metrics, coverage and stuff, which is really where Antonio Brown popped for the Bucs. Not saying Russell Gage is Antonio Brown, but I think he will come in and he's going to be one of the guys that's really going to help beat the single man coverage when it's 3rd and 7, right? And you got to get the first down. I think Russell Gage is going to have spike weeks, so he's going to be fine for best ball. I think it will be tougher to figure out when to get Russell Gage in your lineup in a typical redraft type league where you're playing in 12-team, 10-team formats. I think it's going to be tough to figure out when you can pull the trigger on Russell Gage, but I do like him. And if something weird happens, Chris Godwin gets off to a slow start. If Gronk doesn't come back, that would obviously change the equation. So there's lots of ways that Russell Gage could become more involved. But I like the player a lot. Bigger move for the NFL from a like NFL perspective for the Bucs than it is probably for fantasy, just because of the other weapons on the team.
Would you take Leonard Fournette at the end of the first round in a PPR league?
So the challenge becomes like what receivers are available, right? So, and that's where it's going to be like, oh, now you're staring at Tyreek Hill or Davante Adams, and they've changed teams. Or do you want Leonard Fournette? I still think based on the fragility aspect of injuries, right, to the backfield and things like that, there's an easy argument to be made that you still go with the receivers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I definitely want to get exposure to Fournette. I'm probably, and again, I know this, people hear me say this, probably kind of drives them crazy because I know not everybody drafts a lot of teams, but I still think it's like actionable info for people to understand. Like, I probably want to have Fournette on a 5th of my teams. There's players last year that I never drafted once, and Zeke was one of them. So there are players I full fade. Like Fournette's going to be in the range of where I'm going to want him on teams. And whenever he falls to the middle of the second, the end of the second, man, or if he sneaks into the beginning of the third, because we're going to see where his ADP settles out. I'm going to want some exposure to Leonard Fournette there, because I think once you get like down to the end of the second and you start talking about DK Metcalf, I'm fine taking Leonard Fournette over DK Metcalf with the quarterback situation that DK Metcalf has, right? You could make an argument that once you get to CeeDee Lamb, and I love Lamb, I'm high on Lamb this year. I'm going to have quite a bit of exposure, but I know there are people looking at it and go, well, Lamb's not quite ever done it. Sure, he's going to have, you got Amari Cooper gone, but can he take the step forward? I think Lamb will, based on what we've seen in his first 2 years. He led the team in targets per route run last year at 22%. But I can see an argument of why someone might want to take Fournette. I'm probably mostly going to lean to taking Lamb or AJ Brown there. But I think Fournette's definitely going to be on some of my teams. And he's in my top 7. It's hard to project him outside the top 10. Fournette, Kamara, Connor. That's my order. I've got him above Kamara, Connor, and Mixon.
And the rest of the NFC is dog shit. So, he's going to score a boatload of touchdowns. A comment here in the chat from Joe King saying your hair needs its own Instagram because it is a work of art.
Well, Austin Gell from PFF has been telling me I need to do Instagram and I need to do TikTok. So, look, I'm open. Like
at FF Hustle, by the way, on Instagram. We've been posting stuff. Dwayne refuses to get Instagram, but maybe ask your wife.
I just don't want another social media to be accountable for. Like, I like social media for what it is, and I enjoy engaging with people, but I don't want to be worried about keeping 3 things up to date. Like, and because I can be like obsessive compulsive about things. And I'm going to feel like I got to keep when I update one, I've got to update each of the other. And then like there's the additional time to make a video for TikTok. look, I'm open. Like if people have got ideas and they want to share with me, hit me in the DMs. If you want to coach me on this stuff about how I can streamline some of these things and I should be thinking about it differently, because honestly, I probably haven't put as much thought into it as I have. More of my thought process is around my content, but I need to do a better job of like how I deliver it. I fully acknowledge that. So totally open to suggestions from folks. I'm scary that I'm like opening like this box, of like, am I going to like just take all this additional time away from other things I enjoy doing? Like, I just want to be careful. And, just the whole social media, it can be a drain, like on your mental health. Like I try to be careful with it.
Spoiler alert, at FF
Grease
Hustle.
2 from Matthew Miles. I don't know if I guess I have to go look at pictures of Grease 2. Like I know Grease 1, I can see the cover right now, but that just looks like more of a, a greasy kind of greased back hairstyle. So I'll have to see Grease 2.
On TikTok at FF Hustle and on Instagram at FF Hustle, I run those accounts, so Dwain doesn't have to worry about them. So when you see all the quotes that PFF,
can you run my personal accounts too, Trey?
Sure. Hey, why not? So let me hit you with two more here. First one, James Conner.
I'm sorry, these are supposed to be rapid fire, so if we need to do more, we can, and I'll shorten my answers.
We got two left.
Yeah.
James Conner averaged 23.3 PPR fantasy points in the 5 games without Chase Edmonds last year. Oh, by the way, Chase Edmonds is now a Miami Dolphin. So James Conner, for the moment, is the lead back in Arizona. I fully expect them to draft somebody else. It's not just going to be Eno Benjamin. But they gave him some more money, 3-year deal. James Conner finished as PPR running back 8 last year. Where do you see him in your ranks? Where would you be comfortable pulling the trigger on him in a draft?
Yeah, from a points per game standpoint, like even better than that. And if you were to look at the games where just he got to play by himself, right? Really great. Like, so yeah, Connor's at 9 for me right now. Another guy, he'll be 27 in the 2022 season. So I've got him right there. You could make an argument. I would be fine if someone wanted to draft him over Alvin Kamara. Why? Cardinals are just going to be most likely a better offense than what you're going to get from the Saints. I mean, I've got them right there together. Conner got heavy usage in the passing game when Chase Edmonds was out, which he's now gone to Miami. So look, Conner and Fournette are both guys that are sitting there a little bit older than what you want to see. Neither have necessarily been elite in any of the underlying metrics we like to see as far as missed tackles force, as far as explosive rushing plays of 10 yards or more. They're decent. But the other thing that's of note is they haven't really hit a cliff with those numbers. Like with David Johnson and other guys in the past, I've really seen some of those underlying metrics really start to tail off, and then their production just tanks. We haven't seen that yet with these two players. James Conner obviously comes with injury concerns, been really rough as far as him, just having to play through nagging things. And he's a very physical style of running back, which does lead to, some additional issues for him, but nearly made it through the season this year, completely healthy. So yeah, I like him. I don't think there's any way you can rank him outside the top 10 for the year 2022. Fournette and Conner, like if you're not in a win now window and dynasty, I think you sell high on them, right? To a team that's really competitive. Because look, come this time next year, we get a very different views around Fournette and Conner. In 2 years from now, we will certainly have way different views of Fournette and Conner. But for 2022, yeah, they probably will be. Let's just be honest. Like 2022, though, like, man, it's hard to not rank these two guys. And again, they've already done it. They've shown us. And at running back, the game's all about volume. And I just don't see any competition for their backfields right now. And the Buccaneers are going to be an elite offense. The Cardinals should be a good offense.
Let me tell you guys something here.
I like both of them better than Joe Mixon. So
here's how fast things change in the NFL. We're talking about 2 years from now. And again, these guys sign multi-year contracts. All that's nonsense. It's just what guaranteed money they have. They're all basically like 1-year deals. 2 years ago, 2019, all right, I'm looking at the running back PPR final rankings. Mark Ingram was number 11. Todd Gurley was number 14. Todd Gurley's been out of the NFL. This is 2 years ago. He's a top 15 back. Le'Veon Bell was 16th. James White, Phillip Lindsay was a top 20 back. Devonta Freeman. I mean, it's crazy how fast things change at the running back position. So if you can get something for those guys, by all means, please do it. Finally,
I'll say one thing you think about with these, like, again, these are kind of a blend in the way I'm approaching these ranks. But like if you're drafting best ball teams right now, like James Conner and Fournette, there's a chance those teams draft a running back.
Sure.
Like, so you don't have to get your exposure to them today. Like, you could wait. You can wait a couple months. But like, if you wanted to look at it that way, like Joe Mixon's probably a little safer and he's in the same tier. Like, I don't think the Bengals are going to draft a back in the first couple of rounds. We could see it from the Bucs. We could see it, from the Cardinals. And there's other, there's guys that I've clearly got them behind, like Derrick Henry, Najee Harris. Dalvin Cook's also going to be 27 this season, but they've got Madison. I don't think they're going to add it back. I would say of the guys I have in the top 10 right now, the two players that are most likely to get competition through the draft on day one or day two, more likely like day two, would be Fournette and would be Connor. Not saying that's a slam dunk. Like, they could easily dodge that bullet. But if I had to put a wager on which ones would be most at risk if their team drafted a day two back, it would be those two guys.
Let me finally ask you about soon-to-be 30-year-old wide receiver Robert Woods. So he was traded to the Tennessee Titans, as I said he would be on Twitter, and I got some slack from folks when I said there was a deadline in his contract to get paid, and people are like, oh, that won't happen. Well, guess what? He got traded like a day later. So Robert Woods now moves on to Tennessee. What do you think of Bobby Tree's healthy, hopefully, in Tennessee, running alongside A.J. Brown? This is good things for Tannehill and this whole offense. I think he's a major upgrade on Julio Jones, who just, couldn't stay healthy. If Robert Woods is healthy, we know he's a great blocker for the run game. This is a plus for Derrick Henry. This is a plus for Ryan Tannehill. But in terms of drafting Robert Woods for fantasy football, I might want someone else to do that.
Yeah, I think of him more as a wide receiver 4. He's the second option on a run-heavy team that could have an alpha. A.J. Brown, like, we still haven't seen, like, his full, like, apex. Like, we haven't seen, like, what he can really do. Like, he can be a 25-30% target share guy. So I think for Woods, that makes it tough. If you're going to be a 20-22% guy on a team that is probably going to run the ball as much as any other team in the NFL, I think he's going to give you weeks of usability. But I think it's going to be tough to really want to plug him in to your lineup every single week. I think if you are thinking of him, like, just think of him as a low-end wide receiver 3. If he ends up doing something more than that, I think it's going to be because you got some luck as far as A.J. Brown was hurt, or you got some touchdown luck where he scores like 10 or something like that, which is possible. Like, that could really happen. But it's not going to be a pass first offense. Like, that would take a huge change for that to occur. It would take a lot of injuries, this is Mike Vrabel, a defensive minded head coach, and they haven't totally revamped the offense. We saw them last year with Julio Jones, and even in the games he was healthy, they still wanted to run the ball if they could. And even once Derrick Henry got hurt, they still wanted to run the ball. So I just think it's a situation where Woods is a really good player, really good fit from an NFL perspective. I think the Titans are a much better team NFL-wise. I just don't see it as being a big deal for me in fantasy football. I'll have some exposure for Robert Woods, but again, not a player that I'm going to be trying to get a lot of shares of, not a player I'm going to be reaching for by any means.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate Dwain you coming and hanging out with us. Make sure you guys give us a review on iTunes. Go over to YouTube, search Fantasy Football Hustle. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. We'll do some more stuff over there. I know it's been a little sporadic. I've got a real job, and so does Dwain. He's doing full time, and Dwain's always got to work with Ian Hardis over there, so you can find the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, and they do amazing stuff there. So you can always find even more Dwain out there. But we'll try to get back on a more familiar schedule for you guys here in the off season. If you got any guests you might want us to bring on, just shoot us a message at FF Hustle, and we'll see what we can do. We'll line up some of the big names here in fantasy football. But if you got me, you got Dwain. Who the hell else do you need? Come on, let's be honest here. All right, Dwain, anything else before we get out of here?
No, man, there's a ton of other guys that, we can hit on as we go.
Exactly.
I know we didn't get to everything, but a lot of the more recent news we definitely hit on. So we'll circle back around, and we'll obviously do some things where we walk through projections and that kind of stuff, which I'm working on now. So a lot more to come.
All right, guys, and remember to never get out hustled. Have a great night, folks.